What's up, everybody? This is Bevo,
And I'm Robert Rostick.
and you are watching Raising Unmanageables. Today is our 61st episode.
Yeah.
And Robert,
Yes, sir.
today we're going to talk a little bit about why creatives should broaden their horizons and roll in other circles and start storytelling to different people outside of just other artists, outside of just other creatives.
Sounds good to me. And before we get started, let's recognize the people on the set. We have Alex, and I can't ever say a last name.
I want to mess it up again because this is what happens. Alex Zadarazny.
Zadarazny.
I almost said Zadaradny, but it's Zadarazny.
I can't ever say
Alex Zadarazny is on set. She is manning the camera.
And Mason Nagarian is producing the show today.
Yep.
So once again, number 61.
And we have Linda way in the background. She's doing Photoshop stuff, and she's waving at a camera that's not pointing her direction.
In fact,
so that's going to be awesome.
At the end of this segment, why don't we tag some of Linda's work?
We should tag some of Linda's work
Yeah, there you go.
because she does phenomenal work.
She does phenomenal work, so we can go tag it. Sounds good. Now, you were saying something about creatives doing something as far as our topic today.
Yeah, so it is my theory. Right, this is my theory. It's not anything that I have tested
Okay.
or I haven't put focus groups together on this.
Okay.
But my theory is that creatives spend a lot of time in rooms with other creatives.
Now, I represent Joe Blow Photography 50% group,
Okay.
which means that I think you're right. I think you're absolutely correct on that, because we like to congregate wherever like minds are.
And it's just easy to have that conversation.
Oh yeah,
Right.
and because when you start a conversation with them, they're already up to speed as to what where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah. But what do you think that means overall?
I think overall it is a mistake.
Okay, how so? Because I have my theory on that as well.
When creatives only talk to creatives, it's just like talking to somebody about how great your work is, but you're talking to a friend.
Right.
And a friend is always going to tell you what you want to hear,
Yeah.
rather than venturing out to people that are non-creatives and getting them involved in the creative process. So what are your theories?
Well, my theory is the more time we spend with each other, which is good time because we get a lot of creative thinking done and a lot of work done, the more time we spend doing that and the less time we spend actually talking about why it's important, why we're valuable to other people, to other industries, those are the people who are going to actually have the money to support our work, to support our services, to support our products. And I guess long story short, what I'm saying is most of the times creatives, because they're our friends, don't buy other creatives' work.
So if we go at it from a marketing standpoint or selling standpoint, we're saying that the creatives, when we line ourselves with creatives and other creatives, we're missing out on a market.
Right.
And that market are the people that can actually put our name out there that are not part of the creative industry, such as
as far as other markets.
other markets.
So there's infinite. There's people who are bankers, people who are doctors, people who are lawyers, people who have positioned themselves to have some disposable income and appreciate art and want to actually support art, but art or the creative industry is such a weird industry sometimes. They don't have a point of entry, and they don't know how to get into it. They don't know how to they don't know how to look at these things. They don't know how to look at art. They don't know how to judge it. They don't know who's a good logo designer and who isn't a good logo designer. They don't know who's the best filmmaker and who isn't the best filmmaker. Or you know what I mean? Most of the time people are looking at budget and how much money I have right now, which is important, but at the same time, when the overall budget controls the decisions you make for the level of creative that you're paying for, a lot of times you suffer from that because you don't get exactly what you bought, and then it kind of like it scorns you and it makes it harder for the next creative along the way. So it's just creating those stories. But anyway, we have Mason has a question.
I also wanted to point out that non-creatives need creatives to help them learn how to understand the art and the creative process
The
and
education of it.
Yeah,
Right.
because I do think that, like you're saying, they have one experience and then it turns them off, and then they think that all artists, they're not valuing their skill, or they just want to lump everybody together. They don't know how to ask the right questions to see the experience
Right.
and craft level, or like, you know, you just started doing this, and so you're gonna get results of like someone who's really new,
Right.
and why, you know, it's more expensive, blah blah blah, stuff like that. So yeah,
And
I think
just those questions of that's the education, learning how to ask questions about art, learning how to ask questions or critique photography, learning how to ask questions about film, learn how to ask questions about design, even writing. Just knowing basic terminology is things that most of the times we're only capable of teaching.
Well, as far as the banker and the person at the grocery store, the lawyer, the doctor, and their offices, I don't think it's that important that they know what questions to ask about to artists and about artists. I think it's important that we ourselves put ourselves in the face to actually offer up information so that they will ask the question.
Right.
Because when it comes down to it, every lawyer's office has a photograph or a painting or some kind of drawing in it, and every hospital that I've ever been to has some sort of creative work on the wall,
Right.
done by somebody. Sometimes it's awful work. But then they're looking to buy stuff just because it's there. But I think if we let people know that we are the artists outside of ourselves, outside of our own community. When I go to the grocery store, I often tell people what I do. When I go to the bank, and as you mentioned earlier, it wasn't even on my radar. But when I go to the bank, I say to Sally or Joe, whomever is there,
Right.
I say, let me tell you about my business. Let me
Right.
tell you about what I'm doing. And they're all interested. And I think that really culminates itself whenever you have a showing,
Right.
to invite those people
Right.
in.
And you know, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, last week we talked about being able to not just posing a question and having a conversation, but how do we actually go about doing it, right? How do we actually go about inviting other people
Right.
into our space, right? And value is this big thing that we always hear about, either from a personal standpoint or about our work or our service. And I think the biggest how to invite other people into your space is to almost step outside of yourself as
Well,
a creative
absolutely.
a little bit and as an artist,
100%.
and step into their arena and show yourself as a person that can help them make those decisions along the way. Whether it's you or it's somewhere else, you can help them, you can help bring them along, shepherd them along, if you will, to this understanding. So if people want to buy art for their walls and you're an artist, you can come into that space as a consultant or as an advisor and help them make the decision on what type of art they want for the wall, what type of environment they're curating, right? So there's all these different opportunities
Yeah.
for us to be able to do it that aren't, I think, completely obvious. And I think that sometimes when we have these conversations and we pose these overall questions, I think sometimes people are looking for, how do we do this? And that's one of them. Just
Yeah,
go
sure.
out and provide some kind of value to that person so that they look at you as a person who's an expert on this actual topic, and whether or not it's your service or your work that they're putting up, they know you to be that person that they can go to and trust for that situation.
You're out at the bar or something, and you have this introduction, especially when you meet new people. Hey, what do you do? Well, I'm a banker. Well, what do you? And the banker says, well, what do you do? So, well, I'm a designer. And then you say, oh, that sounds sexy, and we tend to turn it off. Like, nah, it's another job, just like anything else. We downplay it rather than playing it up, saying,
Right.
your bank needs my service.
Right.
And my services are that, and I need yours, because just about every profession out there, every major profession, in our lifetime, we're going to come in contact with a need for that profession. And why can't it be that their needs can be us?
Right.
But we have to make it known. We have to stop downplaying ourselves to the outside world, and then we play ourselves up to the designer that's next to us,
Right.
the artist next to us. Oh, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I've done. But when we go to a person that's outside of that, it's always going to be like, nah, it's just, it's just a job.
Right.
I do logos.
Yeah.
I do pictures. Oh, you do wedding? No, I don't do wedding.
But then we
Right.
go away and we hope
Yeah.
that people acknowledge us when we haven't acknowledged
Absolutely,
ourselves.
Yeah.
And
So I was thinking that I think a lot of people who would label themselves non-creative really, really do want to participate in something creative, in the conversation, in discussing and whatnot, but feel really intimidated by it because, like, having worked with adults and kids at like the age of 12, you're shut down, and unless someone outside, in your family or if a teacher or something really pushes it or you decide to, I think a lot of people walk away from the arts, or it's just like, yeah, I like movies, I like music, but really, like, we don't teach appreciation of how to look at paintings, how to understand poetry, stuff like that anymore in school. And then to make it part of your lifestyle, that you, even though if you're not a painter, but you still, I think it's rare that the general populace feels like they can engage,
Right. That point brings me to my second theory, is that it's more than about your work.
Sure, absolutely.
As creatives, we have to go beyond the work that we're working towards, right? So it still has to always be about the journey that you're on. And in that space in between starting and that your destination to completing work, that's where we're learning the most. And that's where we have the most to teach, not just ourselves, but each other, because of the fact that that's where the most expression is happening and the most feedback and information is being exchanged. We're actually doing research. And so when people get confused about being a creative or intimidated about being a creative, I think they're really looking at it like super, they're going into a super micro, right? Like really, really fine. And they're equating it to, well, I don't know how to draw and I don't know how to do Photoshop, so I can't be a creative, right? But if you can think and you can process an idea from this abstract thing to now applying it to a job or a photo or painting, that's still creative thinking. Creative thinking is just being able to organize ideas to produce.
Right, something that wasn't produced prior to the time that you made it all happen.
Right.
The another side of that is that when we introduce ourselves to the outside world, it is often said that has been said that people don't really buy your art in the sense of that because it's art. People buy your art or your work because of your story. And you've mentioned that a bunch of times in our conversation.
A gazillion times, like every day.
And if we can introduce people to our story,
Right.
and that we have a story to tell,
Right.
then people become interested in the artwork that we're peddling and pushing or creating.
So let's talk about that, because it's another thing we talk about, story, and I think people, I hope it's not, but it seems like it's a buzzword now or a trend now, people talking about story, when I think it's the point,
It is
overall,
the point, yes.
point blank period. How, from your perspective, do you introduce telling your story? Where's the starting point? Because I think people think that we have to just craft this big long thing that's going to stay with us for the rest of our life, and it can't waver, it can't pitch and fall, it can't be customized for the situation, right? So from your position, how can we get into telling our story right now, today?
Well, I think telling a story is just like introducing yourself to a person that's unknown and letting them know your name, your age, what school you went to, and what your interests are. And I think it's as basic as that.
That sounds like making friends.
And that's exactly what it is. Because when you get somebody on board, then that's what they become. They become a
Right,
friend to
right.
you. And that friend becomes your advocate that spreads the word about you. Hey, I have this new friend, or hey, I heard this new song
Right.
on the radio. So you start telling other people about it. And when people start talking about you, after you introduce yourself, then that's when it's time to get into the weeds about your specialty. Not saying, hey, I do photography. Not only do I do photography, but I do photography this way and that way.
Yeah.
And people go, if your story is good and clean, and when I say clean, is that you're not overwhelming their time.
Right.
You're coming in you're giving the points, the bullet points, and then offering to see them again, not to sell them, not at all to sell them, but to invite them
Invite
into
them
your,
in
into
because
your world.
because at the end of the day, it has to resonate,
Oh, it has to.
and the only way it resonates, people have to feel as though they've had that same experience
Absolutely.
or a similar experience. So it's exactly like making friends, really. I like that concept.
Yeah, it's all about it.
You know, I asked my nephew the other day,
Uh-huh.
how does he make friends? And he said, you ask someone their name, you tell them your name, and then you just hang out.
That's pretty good.
Stick around.
Right. and to him, it was that easy. That's making friends. So it's kind of like, if we take that as a concept, it's the same thing
It's the
we're
exact same
doing,
thing.
right? So we need to make friends in different circles. And it's okay to have our creative friends that are producing, helping us collaborate and producing work and helping us push forward. But then it's important as well to have friends that don't know about this, that may want to know about this, and may have some input creatively as well. So I like
Be
the idea of making
the
friends.
gateway.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Be the gateway drug for non-art,
Right.
Like,
Right.
Because initially I had no idea what artistry was until I was introduced to it by a young lady in Atlanta at the time. Her name is Vicki Reagan. She's an artist who makes miniature things into gigantic things and giant billboard-like imagery from little tiny little needles and buttons and things of that sort.
Does she
makes
build these things, or does she photograph
She
these things?
photographs them and then and scans them and then makes them into these really huge,
Gotcha.
gigantic prints. But I always thought, like, wow, that's a photographer. But she said, no, that's my expression. And once I got into understanding that photography is not just a mechanical thing that we do, and then it becomes an expression. Boy, I was introduced to the art world. I mean, 100 times fold. There's another young lady that I met along that same time, Linda Alexander, whom I've become great friends with, who taught me about art from around the world, from South America.
Right.
And the more I got into it, that understanding of it, the more I wanted from it, the more I wanted to learn about it. And I think that was a great thing for both of those ladies to introduce me into this world of art. And I'm so damn glad that they did. And now I'm here to stay,
Absolutely.
And it all started off with a little bit of with becoming a friend who's given me a little bit of knowledge and information, just enough to make me curious to ask the next question. And once I asked the next question, my journey began.
And that's the coolest thing I think about being a creative is, and speaking for myself, is I get to walk around all day long and just think.
Oh,
and,
absolutely,
and
yeah.
that's like the point of my whole day. And then knowing that I can execute on it and to produce it to sell, or just produce because I just want to see it, or to produce it because I want to help someone else and I just need to understand it better. That's my favorite part about being a creative. And that's why I think we're always a little bit creative every day, is because we all have these thoughts. And we all have these, not really concerns, but we all just have these thoughts, and we always have these things that we want to make and produce and see. And the only difference is, as creatives, we just do it.
Yeah, we do it.
We just do it. And we don't care a lot of the times about the mistakes we make in the doing.
Yeah, and when I want to qualify the fact of mistakes. Mistakes is not something that we won't correct. That's not what it is. It's just that it is not at the top of our list. We're not trying to walk gingerly and perfectly through this journey. We understand that our thinking,
Right.
The things that are in our mind are going to manifest themselves into something.
Right.
And the assurance of knowing that we can create from our minds is probably one of the greatest things that I've ever experienced.
You know, I think one of the greatest things that we can all experience as creatives, the more we make new friends, is it will help us as creatives turn off that switch that doesn't want to be judged and help us produce more and know that we're producing it because we need people to see it.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're
That's the
producing it
purpose of
because they want to see it and they don't even know it yet. So hanging around all these other people will allow us to understand how to be judged, how to turn off that fear of judgment and walk into being able to produce because we know that we're inviting other people into our space, into our mind, into our process. So
I got this thing, one last thing about judgment before. I've come to the understanding that no means no for then, no for right now, but it doesn't mean no forever.
absolutely.
And when it doesn't mean no forever, at some point you're going to be at my table instead of being rejected from yours.
Right.
That's something I know.
It always ends up that way too.
It
I found.
does.
So beautiful conversation.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm glad we're back in this platform because it feels a little bit more intimate right now and we can make things happen. So let's get ready to wrap this thing up
All right.
and do our recap
Okay.
and get ready to post this thing to all of the places so it can be seen and have Alex help us out and Mason help us out and Linda's going to help us out one day too.
And make sure that you guys visit trgstudio.net along with
beachandmaine.com and actually look for an invite from us if you want from what is being unmanageable. I should know that by now, but some beautiful things happening already, so check that out. We'll put it in the comments. And Robert, take us out.
So, as always, when you're making a friend or you're just out there thinking about all of your creative choices, take a moment from your day to be unmanageable.
That's right. Thank y'all for tuning in. This is Bevo.
And I'm Robert Rostick.
This is episode 61 of Raising Unmanageables.
And I think we're out.
We'll talk to you soon.